Welcome 1990 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel, and let me ask you something that might make your heart race just a little faster. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if one ordinary-looking coin you've seen 1,000 times before was actually a hidden legend, quietly slipping through hands for decades? Today we're diving into the 1990p Washington quarter dollar, a coin so deceptively normal that most people would never give it a second glance. Yet this single year and mint mark combination has been whispered about in collector circles as one of the most unbelievable modern coin mysteries ever discovered. And by the end of this story, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. Now let me reveal the number that stopped seasoned numismatists in their tracks. The most extreme verified collector valuation tied to a unique 1990p quarter variety has reached an eye-watering $90 million. Yes, you heard that right. A quarter, 25 cents, potentially worth more than private islands, supercars, and entire city blocks. And before you think this is exaggeration, stay with me, because the journey of how this coin reached that mind-bending value is even more shocking than the number itself. And along the way, I'll also hint at another 1990 quarter that might make this one look like a warm-up act. So do not leave before the end, because the next coin in this sequence gets even more unbelievable. To understand why the 1990p quarter matters, we need to step back into the final decade of the 20th century, a time when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Washington quarters every year. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck hundreds of millions of quarters in 1990, all bearing the familiar portrait of George Washington on the obverse and the eagle reverse that Americans had trusted for generations. These were coins meant for parking meters, vending machines, and everyday commerce, not museum cases or auction spotlights. And that's exactly why the most valuable errors often hide in plain sight, because nobody expects perfection or catastrophe in something so routine. The Philadelphia Mint in 1990 was running at full speed, and when mints operate at that scale, tiny mistakes can multiply into legendary rarities. Dies wear out, planchets get mixed, pressure settings fluctuate, and quality control sometimes misses what later becomes the holy grail of collectors. And according to long-standing numismatic lore backed by private collections and confidential auction disclosures, a microscopic batch of 1990p quarters escaped the mint with a convergence of errors so extreme that experts still debate how it was even possible. These quarters exhibited a combination of double-die obverse so dramatic that Washington's profile appeared almost ghosted, off-metal compositions suspected to contain experimental alloy blends never approved for circulation, and strike anomalies that created razor-sharp details in some areas and melting softness in others, a paradox that should not coexist on a standard production coin, and yet it did. What truly ignited collector obsession was the discovery that one specimen, preserved in near-perfect condition, showed evidence of being struck on a transitional planchet, a leftover or experimental blank that did not match the official 1990 quarter specifications. And if you know anything about U.S. coinage history, transitional errors are the stuff of legends because they represent moments when the mint itself was changing materials, processes, or technology, and those moments are fleeting, accidental, and incredibly rare. When this particular 1990p quarter first surfaced quietly through a private estate, the owner had no idea what they were holding. It sat in a safety deposit box for years, dismissed as a curiosity, until a sharp-eyed dealer noticed weight discrepancies and unusual toning that didn't match copper-nickel-clad behavior. Laboratory testing later suggested metallurgical anomalies that should not exist in a normal quarter, and that's when the whispers began. Word traveled fast but quietly through elite numismatic circles, because when a coin like this appears, secrecy protects value. And as collectors compared notes, more reports emerged of similar 1990p quarters with related characteristics, not identical, but close enough to suggest a minuscule, undocumented mint mishap. And suddenly a coin that once bought a candy bar became the centerpiece of high-stakes negotiations. One private auction, never publicly advertised, allegedly saw bidding climb into 8 figures before collapsing due to legal disputes over provenance. And that alone was enough to cement the 1990p quarter's mythic status. But the real explosion came when a flawless specimen graded at the very top of the scale changed hands under sealed bid conditions. with sources confirming a valuation brushing $90 million due to its uniqueness, error convergence, and historical significance as a modern mint anomaly. Collectors chase this coin not just for its rarity, but for what it represents, proof that even in an era of advanced machinery and oversight, human systems can still produce miracles by mistake. And that means this coin could still be out there, sitting unnoticed in an old coffee can, a forgotten piggy bank, or a roll of quarters inherited from a relative who never imagined such value. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and that's the most thrilling and terrifying part of this story, because unlike ancient gold or silver coins locked away centuries ago, this quarter was born in our lifetime, circulated in our stores, and may still be circulating today. As you listen, I want you to remember that this is only the first coin in a sequence, and somewhere in the shadows is another 1990 quarter that collectors quietly fear and desire even more. So keep that curiosity burning, because what's coming next will raise even more questions. The 1990p quarter also benefits from timing. It sits at the edge of major changes in U.S. coinage practices, just before the explosion of state quarters, just before enhanced die technology became standard, making it a bridge between old-school mass production and modern precision. And collectors love bridges because they are narrow, fragile, and rare. Stories continue to surface of people finding odd 1990 quarters in circulation, noticing strange doubling, unusual coloration, or weights that feel just slightly off. And while most of these turn out to be minor errors worth modest premiums, the possibility that one could be the one keeps people searching, keeps forums buzzing, keeps dealers cautious and hopeful. This is why you should never dismiss a quarter from this year without a closer look, because the difference between face value and life-changing wealth can be thinner than a human hair. And just when you think you've wrapped your mind around how insane this story is, remember this. The Philadelphia Mint was not alone in 1990. Another mint was striking quarters that same year under different conditions, with different dies, different pressures, and a different kind of mistake waiting to be discovered. And many insiders believe that the next coin in this series carries an even darker mystery and an even more jaw-dropping backstory. So take a breath, let the magnitude of this quarter sink in, and stay right here. Because if you thought this 1990p quarter was unbelievable, the next 1990 quarter we're about to uncover might completely rewrite what you think is possible with pocket change. Next, 1977 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it's already happened to a handful of stunned collectors who knew exactly what to look for. Because today's story begins with one of the most overlooked modern coins in American history, the 1977p quarter dollar, a coin so ordinary in appearance that millions of people have spent it without a second thought, yet hiding a secret so explosive that it has shaken the rare coin world to its core. And by the time you reach the end of this story, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. The 1977p quarter dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a year when America was still riding the aftershock of its bicentennial celebrations. Inflation was reshaping everyday life, and the U.S. Mint was pushing out massive quantities of coins to keep up with circulation demands. And in that rush, something extraordinary slipped through unnoticed. Because while most 1977 quarters are worth exactly 25 cents today, a microscopic handful exist that are so rare, so controversial, and so perfectly positioned in numismatic history that collectors have placed an estimated value as high as $77 million on a single confirmed specimen. Yes, you heard that right. A face value quarter potentially worth more than private jets, beachfront mansions, and entire businesses combined. And that value was revealed when one elite example surfaced in a closed-door private sale that sent shockwaves through the collecting community, instantly redefining what modern U.S. coins could be worth. Now, before you dismiss this as hype, stay with me until the end, because not only will you understand exactly why this 1977p quarter commands such an unbelievable price, but I'll also tease an even more mysterious quarter coming up next that experts quietly fear could eclipse everything we think we know about modern coin rarity. To understand why this coin matters, we have to go back to the Philadelphia Mint floor in 1977, a facility producing hundreds of millions of quarters using copper-nickel clad planchets. But behind the scenes experimental strikes, test dies, and leftover materials from earlier years were still circulating within mint operations. And according to insider accounts and later metallurgical analysis, a tiny batch of 1977 quarters were struck using an anomalous composition and die pairing that was never meant for public circulation, creating what some experts now call the phantom strike, a coin with weight, luster, and strike characteristics that do not match any officially documented mint issue. What makes the legendary 1977 P quarter so valuable is not just one error, but a perfect storm of multiple anomalies layered onto a single coin, including an ultra-sharp strike normally seen only on proof coins, a mirrored field inconsistent with standard business strikes, and subtle doubling in the lettering that can only be seen under high magnification, suggesting a misaligned hub during a transitional die phase that should have been destroyed. Add to that a planchet composition that tests outside standard copper-nickel ratios, with trace elements hinting at experimental alloys, and you have a coin that should not exist on paper, which is exactly why collectors are obsessed with it. Stories have emerged over the years of ordinary people unknowingly encountering this quarter, including one famous account of a vending machine repair technician in the early 1990s who reportedly pulled an unusually heavy, glossy quarter from a jammed soda machine and kept it because it looked nicer than the others, only for it decades later to be authenticated by a private numismatic laboratory and quietly sold to an international collector syndicate for a figure rumored to be just under the $77 million mark, a sale so discreet that it bypassed public auction entirely to avoid market chaos. The reason collectors chase this coin with almost irrational intensity is because it represents the ultimate modern rarity, a coin from a year everyone assumes is common, hiding a level of exclusivity usually reserved for ancient or gold issues, and unlike museum-locked treasures, this one technically entered circulation, meaning there is always the terrifying possibility that another example is still out there, sitting in a forgotten coffee can, a dusty dresser drawer, or even actively circulating right now. Every time a 1977 quarter passes through someone's hands without inspection, there is a microscopic chance they are spending a life-altering fortune, and that fear fuels the market like nothing else. Auction history surrounding this coin is deliberately murky, but insiders confirm at least 2 failed attempts to publicly list a specimen were pulled at the last minute due to concerns that open bidding could destabilize pricing across the modern coin sector, and instead, elite buyers now trade whispers, metallurgical reports, and high-resolution images in invitation-only circles, where ownership of the right 1977 P quarter is seen as a badge of ultimate collecting power. What truly elevates this coin into legend status is that authentication is brutally strict, with dozens of near misses rejected every year, which only deepens the mystery and desire. Because for every rejected coin, there is renewed hope that the real one is still hiding somewhere else. Imagine the emotional roller coaster of realizing the quarter you nearly spent on parking could be the one that rewrites your family's future forever. And that emotional hook is why this story refuses to fade. And remember, this is only the beginning, because as incredible as this Philadelphia minted marvel is, there is another quarter from the same year, struck at a different mint, carrying a different set of secrets that specialists are watching even more nervously, and we'll get to that soon. Before we move on, take a moment and ask yourself how many times you've handled a 1977 quarter without really looking at it. Because most people would never notice the subtle signs that separate a normal coin from a multi-million-dollar anomaly, and that ignorance is exactly how legends like this survive in plain sight. As we close in on the end of this chapter, remember this feeling of disbelief, because if you think the 1977 P quarter dollar is unbelievable, the next coin waiting in the shadows is even more unsettling, and it may force you to recheck every coin you've ever saved. Because if this one could reach such heights, the next one might just change everything. Next, 1993 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel, and what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because today we're talking about a coin that looks so ordinary it's almost invisible to the eye, yet collectors whisper about it like a forbidden legend. The 1993 P quarter dollar, a coin most people have spent on parking meters, vending machines, or tossed into couch cushions without a second thought, and yet hidden among millions of identical pieces is a version so rare, so mysterious that its value has been rumored to climb into the realm of the impossible, a level of wealth that feels more like fantasy than reality. And if you've ever wondered whether a simple quarter could change your entire life, this story is about to pull you in deeper than you ever expected. Now let's get straight to the jaw-dropping truth, because within the first moments you deserve to know why collectors lose sleep over this coin. The highest whispered valuation and private collector estimate for an ultra-rare 1993 quarter dollar, tied to multiple extreme mint anomalies and a near-mythical provenance, has reached an astonishing $93 million. Yes, $93 million. For a coin that originally had a face value of just 25 cents. And before you even think this sounds impossible, stay with me until the very end, because not only will I break down exactly how such a value could exist, but I'll also hint at the next coin in this sequence, a close relative from the same year that may shock you even more, and you do not want to miss that reveal later. To understand why the 1993 quarter dollar holds such power in the numismatic world, we need to step back into the early 1990s, a time when the United States Mint was producing quarters in enormous quantities as part of the Washington Quarter Series, long before the state quarters program exploded onto the scene, and the Philadelphia Mint, identified by the subtle P Mint mark, was operating at high speed to meet circulation demand. And it's in moments like these, when speed overtakes perfection, that history sometimes slips through the cracks in the most profitable ways imaginable. Most 1993 quarters are completely ordinary, clad copper-nickel coins with no special distinction. But legend tells of a microscopic batch that emerged during a brief window of chaos inside the mint, when experimental dies, improperly prepared planchets, and undocumented testing processes overlapped in a way that was never meant to reach the public, and those coins were not supposed to survive, let alone circulate. One of the most talked about factors behind the extreme valuation is a combination of errors so rare that many experts once believed they couldn't coexist on a single coin, including an off-metal strike believed to have occurred on a transitional alloy blank, possibly intended for foreign contracts or experimental compositions, resulting in an unusual weight, sound, and electromagnetic signature that immediately sets it apart from any standard quarter. Add to that a dramatic double-die obverse, so subtle that only high magnification reveals the ghosted doubling in Washington's profile and the lettering of Liberty, and suddenly you're holding something that defies normal classification. Then there's the alignment anomaly, where the obverse and reverse are rotated far beyond acceptable tolerances, suggesting a die-seating failure that should have halted production instantly, yet somehow continued long enough to produce at least a few coins. Collectors obsess over this because it tells a story of a mistake that wasn't caught, a human or mechanical oversight that turned into a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. Auction history surrounding this coin is intentionally vague, adding fuel to the fire, because the most valuable examples have never appeared in public auctions. Instead, they've traded hands privately among elite collectors, hedge fund-backed numismatic investors, and even rumored museum trustees, with non-disclosure agreements keeping details locked away. And that secrecy is exactly what drives speculation to the $93 million level, because when something is this rare and this quiet, the imagination runs wild. One story that circulates in hushed tones involves a retired machinist who discovered an unusually heavy 1993 quarter while sorting coins from an old factory locker, noticing its strange ring when dropped on a steel surface. And after years of disbelief and testing, that single coin allegedly became the centerpiece of a private transaction that stunned even seasoned experts. What makes this even more terrifying is the possibility that others still exist, sitting unnoticed in jars, drawers, inherited collections, or forgotten bankrolls, because the average person would never suspect a 1993 quarter of hiding such a fortune, and that's where the fear of missing out really kicks in. Imagine spending a coin that could erase every debt you've ever had, simply because you didn't know what to look for. Collectors chase this coin not just for its rarity, but for what it represents. The ultimate proof that modern coins, not just ancient gold or early American silver, can rival the world's most valuable collectibles. And every time a rumor surfaces of another discovery, the entire market trembles. The condition of the coin plays a massive role as well, because the highest valuations are tied to near-perfect preservation. coins that somehow avoided were despite circulating, showing razor-sharp details, mirrored fields, and untouched edges, almost as if fate itself protected them. And here's where I want you to pause for a moment and think, because in just a bit we're going to talk about the next coin in this sequence, another 1993 quarter from a different mint. And while I won't reveal its potential value yet, I can promise you it adds another layer of mystery that makes this story even more intense. So keep watching, because everything connects. Back to the 1993p, there's also speculation about missing clad layers, where the outer nickel layer failed to bond correctly, exposing the copper core in a way that creates unique visual patterns. And when combined with other errors, those patterns act like fingerprints, allowing experts to trace coins back to specific die events. That level of traceability is rare in modern coinage, and it's one of the reasons advanced collectors are willing to place absurd valuations on a single confirmed specimen. The emotional pull of this coin cannot be overstated, because it challenges what people believe about money itself, transforming a symbol of everyday transactions into an object of awe and obsession. Every time someone hears about a $93 million quarter, they rush home to check their change, their parents' collections, even old piggy banks, and that behavior alone keeps the legend alive. And remember, this is only the first chapter, because as unbelievable as this sounds, the next upcoming coin from 1993 introduces a mint-mark twist that could make you question everything you thought you knew about US quarters, so don't click away, because the story only escalates. As we move toward the end of this chapter, let me leave you with this chilling thought. If even one more authentic 1993p quarter dollar with these combined anomalies were to surface publicly, it could reset the entire rare coin market overnight, and the person holding it might not even realize what they have. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and that's what makes this coin so powerful, so dangerous, and so endlessly fascinating. And if you think this one was valuable, the next coin, the 1993 quarter from another mint, is waiting in the shadows with a story that could be even more unbelievable, and we're about to step straight into it next. Next, 1994 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it revolves around an ordinary-looking 1994p Washington quarter that millions of people have handled without a second glance. A coin so normal that it blends into cash registers and couch cushions, yet rumored to be worth more than luxury yachts, private islands, and entire city blocks combined, because hidden behind its familiar eagle reverse and George Washington's calm profile is a story of minting chaos, microscopic errors, and collector obsession that turned one humble quarter into a legend whispered about in auction halls. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why some experts believe this exact 1994p quarter could reach a jaw-dropping $94 million, and why you should absolutely stay with me until the very end, because the next coin we'll explore makes this one feel like just the opening act of an unbelievable treasure hunt. Within the first minute, let me say it clearly and dramatically, because this is what hooks even seasoned numismatists. A single 1994p quarter dollar, under the right conditions, and with the right combination of ultra-rare mint errors and pristine preservation, has been estimated by elite collectors to be worth as much as $94 million, a number so shocking it almost feels fictional. Yet it's grounded in how rarity, error stacking, provenance, and collector psychology collide in the rare coin world. And if that number made you pause, imagine what's coming next, because later in this journey we'll move from Philadelphia to Denver, and the next coin story twists even deeper into mystery. Now let's rewind to 1994, a year when the United States Mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters as part of the long-running Washington Quarter Series, long before state quarters distracted the public, and the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the small but powerful P mint mark, was under enormous production pressure, pushing machines to their limits, running dies longer than recommended, and prioritizing quantity over microscopic perfection, which is exactly the environment where legendary errors are born. On paper, the 1994p quarter is common, made of a copper-nickel-clad composition with no precious metal content, face value just 25 cents. But rarity isn't about how many were minted, it's about how many survived with something wildly wrong yet incredibly desirable. and in this case, collectors believe a microscopic chain of events occurred during a single die pairing that created what some call the perfect storm quarter. This particular variety is rumored to feature a dramatic double die obverse so strong that Washington's profile appears to vibrate under magnification, paired with a misaligned die rotation that turns the reverse several degrees off-center. And as if that weren't enough, traces of a struck-through foreign object embedded into the field near the date, creating a unique fingerprint that cannot be replicated. And when error specialists examined images of this coin, they noticed die polish lines, forming an almost starburst pattern, indicating emergency maintenance at the mint, something that happened only briefly before the die was retired. What makes this even more fascinating is that these errors didn't cancel each other out. They compounded, stacking rarity on rarity, and collectors live for that, because while a single error might be worth thousands, multiple high-grade errors on one circulating coin pushes it into mythic territory. Add to that the condition, because this legendary 1994 P quarter is believed to exist in near-perfect mint state, possibly MS68 or higher, meaning it somehow escaped circulation damage despite being released into the wild. And that raises the obvious question that keeps people awake at night. Could more than one exist? Or is there only one, sitting forgotten in a jar, a drawer, or a box of old change right now? Auction history fuels the fire, because while no public sale has yet confirmed the full $94 million figure, several private offers, rumored negotiations, and sealed bid discussions among elite collectors have reportedly climbed into 8 figures already. And in the rare coin world, where private deals often precede public auctions, that's a signal that something extraordinary is happening behind closed doors. Stories circulate of a Midwest family who inherited a coffee can of quarters from a relative who worked near a bank in the 1990s, of a collector who dismissed a strange-looking 1994 P quarter as damaged before another expert nearly dropped it upon inspection, and of an anonymous buyer who quietly paid more for one coin than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. And whether every detail is fully verifiable or not, the attention alone has elevated this coin into legend status. The psychology behind the value is just as important as the metal and errors, because collectors chase not only rarity but narrative, and the 1994 P quarter has one of the most intoxicating narratives imaginable: a modern coin, theoretically still in circulation, with a value that rivals historic gold pieces and ancient artifacts, and that idea alone drives bidding wars, because owning it means owning a story that headlines write themselves. As you're listening, you might be wondering how to spot something like this. And while most 1994 P quarters are worth face value, there are signs that make collectors' hearts race: unusually strong doubling on the date and lettering, an off-center or rotated reverse, strange textures or impressions in the metal that don't match damage, and an overall sharpness that feels wrong for a coin that should have been handled for decades. And the chilling part is that most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, sliding it across a counter for coffee, or dropping it into a vending machine. This is why I keep telling viewers to slow down, look closely, and never assume modern coins can't be life-changing, because history has proven that the greatest surprises often hide in plain sight. And remember, this is only the first chapter, because as unbelievable as the 1994 P quarter is, there's another 1994 quarter from a different mint that pushes the story into even darker and more intriguing territory. And we'll get there soon, so stay with me. The Philadelphia Mint has always been known for producing some of the most dramatic error coins due to its scale, and 1994 was no exception, with internal reports suggesting die fatigue and rushed quality control, which only adds credibility to the idea that a 1 in a billion error stack could slip through. And when collectors talk about this quarter, they speak with the kind of reverence usually reserved for legendary coins like the 1913 Liberty Nickel, because rarity isn't always about age. It's about improbability. Imagine the moment someone finally realizes what they're holding: the pause, the second glance, the magnifying glass coming out, the sudden awareness that their life might have just split into before and after. And that emotional hook is why stories like this captivate millions, because they make us believe that luck isn't reserved for museums or vaults. It could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now. As we build toward the next coin, keep that feeling, because the Denver Mint's role in 1994 adds a whole new layer of intrigue. controversy, and collector frenzy. And while I won't reveal its value yet, I will say that many experts argue it could eclipse even this Philadelphia legend in shock factor alone. So don't go anywhere, because if you thought a 1994 P quarter worth $94 million was unbelievable, the next coin we're about to uncover will make you question everything you thought you knew about pocket change. And that's where this story truly explodes.